Imagine a desert,
Yeah.
vast and totally silent.
Yeah. Swept completely clean.
Right? Swept clean of civilization by a nuclear wind, where the only sound is the chanting of monks preserving the ashes of a world that basically burned itself alive.
It's a haunting image.
It really is. And we're staring at that apocalyptic desert today, but, from a much safer vantage point. We're broadcasting right now from a quiet bookline studio in Atchison, Kansas.
Just down the road from Benedictine College.
Exactly. We're sitting right by the river in this great space where old radio, great books, and timeless ideas meet. And today, we are unpacking a true masterpiece of 20th century audio.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the magnificent 15-part, full-cast radio adaptation of Walter M. Miller Jr.'s A Canticle for Leibowitz.
Which is, it's really a post-apocalyptic liturgy of memory and hope. And honestly, it is one of the most ambitious things ever attempted in the audio medium.
Yeah, for sure.
It was produced for NPR and WHA Radio back in 1981. And this broadcast takes a story that spans over a millennium and distills it into this incredibly intimate, haunting, auditory experience.
Okay, let's unpack this, because our mission today isn't just to give you, the listener, a simple plot summary.
Right, we're not doing a Wikipedia recap.
No, not at all. If you're joining us for this deep dive, you likely already know the broad strokes of the Leibowitz saga. You know about the monks in the desert. But what we really want to do is guide you through the layered theological, historical, and philosophical depths of this radio drama.
Yeah, we're going to examine it as a work of art, as cultural prophecy, and, as a really stark meditation on human nature.
So to really get into the mechanics of this story, we kind of have to look closely at the foundational trauma of this world.
The Big Bang in reverse, basically.
Yeah, exactly. We all know the premise, 20th century civilization is wiped out by a global nuclear war. They call it the flame deluge in the broadcast.
But the apocalypse in this radio drama isn't just the bombs. The true apocalypse is what happens after the fallout settles.
Right, the simplification.
Yeah.
Which, to me, is honestly the most terrifying part of the entire lore.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because it wasn't just like a passive loss of data. It wasn't servers degrading over time or books rotting in a damp basement. It was this active, violent eradication of knowledge.
Exactly. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the survivors. They looked at the poisoned air, the irradiated land, the mutated children, and they didn't blame the politicians.
No, they didn't.
They blamed the scientists. They blamed the magi, the intellectuals, the engineers. The survivors formed these rampaging mobs that proudly called themselves simpletons.
Simpletons. It's such a chilling badge of honor.
Right. And their philosophy was brutally straightforward. Knowledge created the bombs, therefore knowledge is evil.
So they just started killing anyone who showed signs of learning.
Anyone. Anyone who could read, anyone who wore glasses, anyone who tried to preserve a book. They burned the libraries to create a great simplification.
It's a visceral, horrifying concept. I always look at it like a planetary temper tantrum.
That's a good way to put it.
Imagine humanity acting like a terrified, furious child who just pinched their finger in a complex toy.
Mm-hmm.
In their rage, they don't just smash the toy. They burn the instruction manual, they blow up the factory, and they execute the engineers.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they destroy the very blueprint they would ever need to build a safe home again. It's basically epistemological suicide.
Epistemological suicide is exactly the right phrase. And that brings us to the core mechanism of the story's survival arc. Into this absolute void of knowledge steps Isaac Edward Leibowitz.
The founder himself.
Right. And who was he? He was a Jewish electrical engineer who worked for the military during the war, meaning he was one of the very people the simpletons were hunting.
He was prime target number one.
Exactly. He survives the deluge, but he loses his wife Emily to the fallout, and he seeks sanctuary in a Catholic monastery. He eventually takes holy orders, becomes a priest, and dedicates his life to countering the simplification.
He founds the Albertian Order of Leibowitz.
Yes.
But let's look at how they actually do this, because this isn't your standard, contemplative monastic order. They have a highly specialized, incredibly dangerous operational mandate.
They're bookleggers and memorizers. The mechanics of this are just fascinating to me. When the mobs are burning the books, these monks are literally smuggling them out in water kegs.
Wow, in water kegs.
Yeah. But physical preservation isn't enough because paper burns and hiding places get found, so they become memorizers. A monk is assigned a text, say, a treatise on physics, or a circuit diagram, or a Shakespeare play.
And he just has to learn it.
He commits it to memory completely. He becomes a living embodiment of that book. If the physical copy is destroyed, the text survives in his neural pathways, ready to be written down again decades or even centuries later.
I have a question about that, though. How do you memorize a textbook on advanced physics when the very concepts of physics have been erased from your culture?
Right, it's a huge problem.
Like, if I don't know what a transistor is, how do I accurately memorize a 400-page book on transistors? Doesn't the meaning just completely degrade?
That's the genius and the tragedy of the Order's mission. The meaning does degrade, at least initially. They are preserving the syntax without the semantics.
Saving the what without understanding the why.
Exactly, or the how. They memorize phonetic sounds and geometric shapes. They treat a circuit diagram like a mystical mandala. Leibowitz himself is eventually betrayed, strangled, and burned by a mob for doing this.
So he becomes a martyr.
He becomes a martyr. But the monks continue his work. They hold on to the raw data of human civilization for centuries, waiting for a future generation that will finally be able to understand what the monks have been blindly chanting out there in the desert.
Which brings us to the incredible chronological scale of this broadcast. We're tracking the collapse and rebirth of a civilization over more than 1,000 years.
It's massive.
It's a sweeping meditation on history and technological pride. But what's so striking to me is how we're experiencing this massive timeline. We're experiencing it through radio.
Let's transition into that, actually, because the audio production of this 1981 WHA and NPR broadcast is paramount to why it works so well.
It really is.
It was adapted by John Reeves, directed by Carl Schmidt, and produced by Schmidt and Marv Nahn.
I want to push on that for a second. Why is radio the right medium for this? Because, when I think of post-apocalyptic stories, I usually think of sweeping visual landscapes.
Yeah, like movies.
Yeah, Mad Max, Blade Runner, things that rely on huge visual budgets. Why does listening to this on audio feel so much heavier?
What's fascinating here is how radio forces your brain, the listener's brain, to do the heavy lifting. When you watch a post-apocalyptic film, the director shows you the ruined city. You passively consume the desolation.
You just stare at the screen.
Exactly. But in a radio drama, you are given a handful of acoustic cues, and you have to construct the empty earth in your own mind. Radio is inherently intimate. It's a voice whispering right into your ear.
Carol Cowan's narration is a perfect example of that.
Yes. Carol Cowan's narration uses this steady, almost detached reverence. She sounds like a chronicler speaking from the end of time. When she describes the fallout or the mutant tribes, she doesn't use melodrama.
It's very matter-of-fact.
The multi-voice narration treats the apocalypse as a liturgical fact.
The sound design is what absolutely anchors it for me. I mean, I'm sitting here in the studio looking out at the river, but when I put the headphones on, I am instantly in the desert Southwest.
The isolation is palpable.
You hear that desolate, endless whistling of the desert wind. You can practically feel the grip in your teeth.
And notice how they use silence. In the first few parts of the drama, there is so much negative space in the audio.
So much quiet.
You hear the slow crunch of sand under sandals. You hear the distant, lonely howl of wolves. You hear the echoing Gregorian chant bouncing off the stone walls of the abbey. The pacing of the sound design is incredibly slow.
It mirrors a civilization that has regressed to a monastic agrarian pace. Time has just stopped.
But then, as the broadcast progresses through the centuries, the sonic landscape completely shifts. The genius of the audio production is that the sound design tells the story of humanity's technological regression and terrifying progression.
It really ramps up.
Exactly. By the time we get to the third movement in the 38th century, that vast desert silence is gone. You're suddenly suffocated by the frantic, bureaucratic hum of teletypes.
They're the jets.
You hear the roar of jet engines cutting across the sky. You hear the sterile, anxious beeping of computer consoles. The audio becomes cluttered, claustrophobic, and urgent.
It's anxiety-inducing.
And without a single word of exposition, the sound design alone tells you humanity has rebuilt the machine and the machine is running out of control.
That perfectly sets up the structure of the narrative. The broadcast organizes this immense stretch of time into 3 distinct symphonic movements. And these movements trace the cyclical nature of human history, the rise, the fall, and the catastrophic rise again.
The wheel of history.
Let's dig into the specific mechanics of these movements, starting with the first fiat homo, which translates to, let there be man.
Fiat homo grounds us in the 26th century, roughly 600 years after the flame deluge. The world is in a profound new dark age.
Very primitive.
The geopolitical reality consists of primitive, warring tribes, mutant scavengers roaming the radioactive zones, and the isolated monks of the Leibowitz Abbey. The mission here is purely the survival of memory, and our entry point is a 17-year-old novice named Brother Francis Gerard of Utah.
Everyone remembers the moment Brother Francis makes his discovery, but I want to talk about the epistemology of that scene. Francis is out in the desert, fasting on a Lenten vigil, and he falls into an ancient subterranean ruin.
Right.
He brushes away the dust and finds a sign that reads, Fallout Survival Shelter, maximum occupancy 15.
And we have to remember how Francis processes this. He lives in a world of profound superstition. To Francis, a fallout isn't a cloud of irradiated dust.
What does he think it is?
A fallout is a mythological, demonic monster to him. He thinks he has literally stumbled into the lair of a demon.
But what he actually finds are just the mundane remnants of a mid-20th century office worker. He finds an old metal box containing papers. He finds a handwritten note that says, pound pastrami can kraut, 6 bagels bring home for Emma.
The pastrami note.
The famous pastrami note. He finds a blueprint for a circuit design. And he finds the skull of a woman with a gold tooth, which the folklore of his order immediately tells him must be Emily Leibowitz, the wife of their founder.
This is where the broadcast asks a fascinating philosophical question. How is meaning generated when context is destroyed?
Right.
Francis has no concept of what a pastrami is. He doesn't know what a circuit design does. But he sees the signature on the memo IEL, Isaac Edward Leibowitz.
So because the name is sacred, the document becomes sacred.
Precisely. The monks treat a grocery list with the exact same reverence as a holy text.
I've always struggled a bit with how to interpret that. Is the story mocking the monks for their ignorance? Is it a satire of religious veneration, showing these guys bowing down to a pastrami order?
That's a very common initial read, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's actually deeply respectful of the monks.
Really? How so?
The narrative isn't mocking their ignorance, it's highlighting their profound humility. The monks acknowledge that they don't understand, but they also believe that truth is objective.
Okay, I see.
They believe that just because they don't understand the pastrami note or the circuit diagram, that doesn't mean it's meaningless. They trust that it had meaning to the ancients, and it will have meaning to the future. So they protect it. They preserve the raw data of civilization, acting as a bridge over an ocean of ignorance.
That bridge eventually reaches the shore in the second movement, Fiat Lux, or Let There Be Light. We jump forward another 600 years to the year 3174.
The sociopolitical landscape has completely changed by then. We are entering a new renaissance. Secular rulers like the ruthless mayor of Texarkana are consolidating empires.
The church isn't the only power anymore.
No, and crucially, a new class of secular scholars is emerging. The era of blind preservation is ending. The era of application is beginning.
This era centers on the collision between two worldviews. You have the Abbey, currently led by Abbot Paulo, holding the ancient memorabilia, and you have a brilliant secular scholar named Thon Taddeo, who is sent by the mayor of Texarkana to examine the monks' archives.
It's a huge moment for the Abbey.
It is, but right as Taddeo arrives, and this is a brilliant piece of narrative timing, a monk named Brother Kornhauer actually manages to apply the ancient knowledge.
Yes, Brother Kornhauer has been studying the theoretical texts. He figures out the underlying physics and builds a treadmill-powered electrical essence dynamo.
An actual generator.
He strings up an arc lamp in the Abbey's reading room. For the first time in over 1,200 years, artificial light pierces the darkness.
The moment that dynamo grinds to life in the audio broadcast, you hear the sheer physical effort it takes. You hear monks walking on a treadmill to spin the generator.
It's so visceral.
The sound of that sparking arc lamp is shocking. It's blinding. It's the physical manifestation of the knowledge they've been hoarding for centuries.
And Thon Taddeo's reaction to this light is incredibly complex. On one hand, he's amazed. He realizes the monks haven't just been copying religious gibberish. They hold the actual physical keys to the power of the ancients.
But he's not entirely happy about it?
No, on the other hand, he's deeply unsettled, even resentful. He views the monks as superstitious caretakers who have been sitting on a gold mine without knowing how to spend it.
This triggers the central philosophical debate of the Second Era. Taddeo wants to take the memorabilia away from the church. He wants to bring it to his secular academies to fuel the expanding empire of Texarkana.
He argues for pure science.
Exactly. The idea that knowledge must advance at all costs and that scientists bear no moral responsibility for how princes and politicians use their discoveries.
Abbot Paulo vehemently pushes back against this. Paulo is terrified of power without moral guidance. He looks at Tadeo's patron, the mayor of Texarkana, and sees a tyrant.
A warlord, basically.
Yeah. Paulo reminds Tadeo that the knowledge he's so eager to unleash is the exact same knowledge that caused the flame deluge.
I use this analogy to think about Tadeo's worldview. He views science like a brilliant mechanic designing a high-speed, incredibly powerful engine.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Tadeo is obsessed with the efficiency of the pistons, the purity of the fuel, the mathematics of the combustion. But he entirely refuses to look out the windshield to see if the car is currently driving off a cliff.
Right.
He genuinely believes his job is just to build the engine. Who steers the car and what they run over is none of his business.
And Abbot Paulo sees the cliff perfectly clearly. This raises an important question for the listener. Is the church justified in trying to hold back the tide of progress?
Are they just being elitist gatekeepers?
Or are they the only adults in the room trying to keep matches away from toddlers? The broadcast doesn't give you an easy out. Tadeo makes a compelling point when he says ignorance is a dark monarch that must be overthrown.
It's hard to argue with that on its face.
But Paulo makes a more terrifying point. If you overthrow ignorance without instilling wisdom, you just get a smarter kind of apocalypse.
Which perfectly, tragically leads us into the third movement, Fiat Voluntas Tua, or Thy Will Be Done.
We jump another 600 years to 3781. The Dark Age is a distant memory. Humanity has completely recovered its technological prowess.
And then some.
They've cracked nuclear energy again. They have starships exploring extrasolar colonies, but inevitably they also have nuclear weapons in space.
Of course they do.
The geopolitical situation is a terrifying mirror of the Cold War. The Asian Coalition and the Atlantic Confederacy are locked in a standoff, and the tension is at a breaking point.
The cycle has returned to the brink of destruction. And this brings us to a massive question about the philosophy of history in this story. Abbot Zerchi, the current head of the order, sees the geopolitical tensions snapping.
He knows it's happening again.
The bombs are going to fall again. So what does this all mean? Is the radio drama suggesting that human history is just a closed, doomed circle? Are we just trapped on a wheel of fire, eternally rising from the ashes just to burn ourselves down again?
That is the ultimate tension of the narrative. If history is just a closed circle, then the monks' 1,200 years of suffering and preservation were utterly pointless.
They just saved the instructions for the guillotine.
They just rebuilt the gun so humanity could shoot itself again, but the broadcast introduces a crucial element that breaks the circle, the quo peregrinator plan.
Quo peregrinator grex pastor secum, whither wanders the flock, the shepherd is with them.
Exactly. Abbot Zerchi receives secret authorization from New Rome to enact this contingency plan. He charters a starship.
A starship full of monks.
He gathers a group of monks, some bishops, children, and the entirety of the memorabilia, and sends them off Earth to an extrasolar colony. The church is taking the memory of Earth into the stars.
So it's not a closed loop.
No, this suggests that history isn't a flat circle, it's a slow, painful, upward spiral. Yes, Earth might burn, but the lineage of memory continues. They are carrying the lessons of the flame deluge out into the cosmos, praying that on a new world, under a new sun, humanity might finally learn how to handle the fire.
And they launch right as the horrific code phrase comes over the government wires. Lucifer is fallen. The nuclear detonations have begun.
It's chilling. To really understand the emotional weight of that apocalypse, we have to pull back from the macro history and look at the specific individuals who suffer through it.
The people on the ground.
History isn't just an abstract cycle in this broadcast. It's written in the blood of its characters.
Let's talk about Brother Francis from the first movement. Francis is fascinating because he is the absolute embodiment of innocence.
Complete innocence.
Think about his life's work. After discovering the fallout shelter, he spends 15 years of his life creating a breathtakingly beautiful gold leaf illuminated copy of that faded circuit design blueprint.
He spends over a decade drawing ornate vines and gold angels around the schematic of a transistor. He treats the geometric lines of the circuit like the holy words of Scripture.
And the tragedy of his journey to New Rome is heartbreaking. He travels across the desert to present this illuminated copy to the Pope, On the way, he is robbed by a group of mutants known as the Poke's Children.
It's such a brutal scene.
The robber looks at Francis's saddlebags, takes the beautiful gold-inlaid copy thinking it's the valuable artifact, and throws the original faded blueprint back in Francis's face.
It's a devastating irony about how the world values aesthetics over truth. The robber values the superficial beauty, the gold, the color, the craftsmanship. He discards the true knowledge, the actual blueprint, because it looks old and ugly.
So Francis gets to New Rome.
When Francis finally reaches New Rome and meets the Pope, he is heartbroken. He thinks his life's work was stolen for nothing.
But the Pope's reaction is what shifts the narrative. The Pope doesn't pity him. He tells Francis that his 15 years of labor weren't wasted.
Right.
The Pope explains that the beautiful copy acted as a decoy. Francis's devotion, his blind faith in the value of what he was illuminating, is exactly what protected the true relic. Francis's life had profound meaning.
And then on his journey back to the Abbey, Francis is killed.
Just like that.
He is shot right between the eyes with a random arrow by the very mutants who robbed him. His innocent life is snuffed out casually, brutally. It forces you to realize that the monks aren't protected by plot armor. They are vulnerable, fragile vessels trying to carry light through a pitch-black world.
Hovering over Francis and over the entire millennium is the figure of Isaac Edward Leibowitz himself. He's the ultimate absent presence.
We never actually hear his voice.
We never hear him speak in the narrative's present timeline, but his shadow dictates the actions of every character.
Leibowitz is the anchor. Look at his symbolic weight. As a 20th century Jewish engineer who designed weapons, he represents the guilt and complicity of the old world.
He helped build the bombs.
As a man who loses his wife to the fallout and seeks sanctuary in the church, he represents profound human grief and the search for spiritual redemption. And as a priest who is ultimately strangled and burned by a mob for smuggling books, he embodies the absolute sacrifice required to protect truth from the tyranny of the majority.
He bridges the gap perfectly.
He bridges the gap between the pre-apocalyptic world and the monastic preservation.
But there's another character whose shadow stretches across the centuries, and frankly, he is the most mysterious and haunting figure in the entire broadcast, the Wanderer.
Sometimes called Benjamin, sometimes Lazarus.
Yeah. If we connect this to the broader theological underpinnings of the story, the Wanderer is an incredible archetype. He is an immortal, recurring Jewish hermit who appears to different characters in all three eras.
He's everywhere.
In the 26th century, he's the one who points Brother Francis toward the rock that hides the fallout shelter. In the 32nd century, he strikes up a deep, somewhat cynical friendship with Abbot Paulo, and he peers into Thon Tadeo's face, looking for the Messiah.
And in the final era.
In the 38th century, he's sitting outside the Abbey as the modern jet planes scream overhead, mocking the apocalyptic pride of modern man. So who is he? What is his mechanical function in the story? Because he breaks the rules of reality the rest of the broadcast adheres to.
He represents Israel. He represents the sheer, stubborn endurance of memory. The text suggests he carries what it calls the burden of original guilt.
What does that mean in this context?
He is the living, breathing memory of humanity's continuous failures. Imagine being doomed to wander the earth, engaged in a tragic, unending wait for a Messiah you fear will never arrive. Forced to watch civilizations build themselves up, invent new ways to be arrogant, and then burn themselves down to ash over and over again. He is the ultimate tragic witness to the human cycle. He anchors the story in a Judeo-Christian theology of exile and waiting.
And speaking of theology, that brings us to the final act, and to a character who represents a completely startling theological profoundness, Mrs. Grayles, or rather Rachel.
This is one of the most complex and beautiful elements of the entire drama. Mrs. Grayles is an old woman who sells tomatoes near the Abbey in the 38th century. She is a bicephalous mutant. She has two heads, a result of the genetic damage echoing down through the centuries of nuclear fallout.
It's such a striking image.
Her second head is dormant, seemingly asleep, like a tumor with a face. She calls it Rachel.
During the final episodes, as the new nuclear war begins and the bombs fall, Abbot Zerke is trapped under the rubble of his own destroyed abbey. The world is ending around him. Mrs. Grayles is brought in, fatally injured by the blast.
And then the miracle happens.
A miracle occurs. The old head, Mrs. Grayles, dies, But the dormant head, Rachel, suddenly awakens.
And we have to really dig into how she awakens. Rachel awakens with complete, pure innocence. The broadcast heavily implies that she is entirely free of original sin. She is a new, immaculate creation.
I always have to stop and think about the theological mechanics of this scene. Zerky is dying. He's a priest. He sees this new, innocent life, and his immediate instinct is to baptize her.
Which makes sense for a priest.
He tries to administer the sacrament, but she refuses it. Why? Why would the broadcast have this pure being reject baptism?
Because baptism, in Catholic theology, is the washing away of original sin. If Rachel is immaculately conceived, if she is prelapsarian, existing in a state of grace before the fall of Adam, she doesn't need baptism.
Because there's nothing to wash away.
She has nothing to wash away. The broadcast flips the dynamic entirely. Instead of the priest administering grace to the mutant, Rachel takes the ciborium containing the consecrated host, the Eucharist, and she administers it to the dying abbot Zerky.
It's an image of pure, transcendent grace amidst ultimate annihilation. The world has destroyed itself through its own sinful pride, but from the radioactive ashes, God brings forth a new, unfallen creation. It's a staggering end to the terrestrial timeline.
The actions of these characters, especially in those final moments, force us to confront the deepest themes the broadcast raises. We've touched on the debate between faith and technology, but I want to dive into the theme of memory versus forgetfulness.
Cultural amnesia. It's the central disease of this world.
Exactly. The broadcast posits the church not as a wielder of political power, which is how modern society often views it, but as the ultimate stubborn preserver of civilization.
They just keep copying the texts.
The monks of the Albertian order copy knowledge they don't understand generation after generation because they refuse to let humanity forget.
The simpletons in the first era burned the books because they wanted to forget the trauma of the war. They had thought forgetting the past would save them from its pain.
But the monks operate on a different truth.
They operate on the fundamental truth that forgetting the past doesn't save you from it. It simply guarantees you will repeat it.
Which is tied intimately to the theme of martyrdom and meaning. We've talked about Francis dying for an illuminated manuscript and Leibowitz dying for a book. The radio drama constantly asks you, the listener, a very direct, uncomfortable question.
What's that?
When the world is reduced to rubble, what has enough transcendent value to demand your very life? What is worth dying for in an age of ash?
For the monks, the answer is truth. Objective truth. But in the final movement, that question of life and death shifts from preserving old books to the agonizing reality of human suffering. And we need to spend some time on this because the broadcast presents one of the most painful, difficult, ethical debates I've ever heard in audio fiction.
You're referring to the triage camp at the Abbey?
Yes. In the year 3781, during a brief ceasefire after the first nuclear strikes, a massive influx of radiation victims arrives at the Leibowitz Abbey.
It's a horrifying scene.
The government sends an emergency response doctor, Dr. Kors, who sets up a medical camp in the Abbey's courtyard. And this leads to a profound clash between Dr. Kors and Abbot Zerky regarding euthanasia.
We need to look at both sides of this argument impartially because the brilliance of the script is that it doesn't caricature either man. It presents both positions with intense, heartbreaking sincerity.
Right.
Let's look at Dr. Kors first.
Dr. Kors is dealing with unimaginable horror. He is standing in a courtyard filled with men, women, and children who have been exposed to lethal doses of radiation. He knows the science.
He knows there's no hope for them.
He knows there is no cure. He knows exactly how their bodies are going to break down. And he knows that their deaths are going to be slow, agonizing, and entirely inevitable.
For Dr. Kors, operating from a utilitarian perspective, the highest moral good in that specific moment is the alleviation of hopeless suffering.
How could you not feel that way looking at that?
He looks at a mother holding an irradiated child and believes that society has a profound duty to offer a painless, merciful exit. He believes that forcing someone to endure a week of agonizing cellular breakdown when a peaceful end is available is a form of torture.
It's compassion.
His position is born of a desperate, overwhelming compassion. He wants to set up a euthanasia station to give these doomed people a humane way out.
But on the other side, you have Abbot Zerky. And Zerky's framework is fundamentally incompatible with Kors's. For the abbot, the moral law against the taking of innocent human life is absolute.
It's not flexible.
It is a deontological hard line. It doesn't flex based on circumstances or the degree of suffering.
Zerke argues that suffering, while terrible and tragic, does not negate the intrinsic divine value of human life. He argues that the state, and Dr. Kors is acting as an agent of the state, does not have the moral authority to orchestrate death.
Zerke sees a slippery slope.
He believes that the moment you concede that a human life can be terminated simply because it is suffering, you shatter the foundational sanctity of life, opening the door to the very utilitarian disregard for humanity that led to the bombs being dropped in the first place.
Zerke outright refuses to allow Dr. Kors to recommend euthanasia on the Abbey grounds. He tells him to take his death camp somewhere else.
It is a brutal collision of frameworks.
Neither man is a monster. Both are driven by their profound understanding of ultimate moral duty in the face of the apocalypse. The radio drama forces you to sit in that agonizing reality where human suffering has been pushed past the breaking point and every choice feels like a failure.
It seems like that which elevate this from a simple sci-fi adventure to a masterpiece of speculative theology.
Here's where it gets really interesting, These themes, technological hubris, cultural amnesia, the instrumentalization of human life, they are just fascinating retro sci-fi concepts from a 1981 radio drama.
No, not at all.
They are a direct, unblinking mirror held up to our present moment.
Absolutely. The specific anxieties that thrum through A Canticle for Leibowitz are our modern anxieties. The broadcast is deeply obsessed with the threat of nuclear annihilation, which, let's be honest, has never actually left us.
We still live with that every day.
But if you look past the atom bomb, you can map the exact same philosophical arguments onto the rapid, unchecked rise of artificial intelligence and algorithmic control today.
Oh, for sure. When Thon Tadeo stands in the Abbey in the 32nd century and demands the memorabilia, claiming that pure science must advance no matter the social cost, you can hear the exact echoes of modern tech leaders.
Move fast and break things.
We see companies pushing AI algorithms forward at breakneck speed, brushing aside concerns about societal collapse, deepfakes, the erosion of truth, or the loss of human agency. It's the exact same hubris.
We are building an incredibly powerful engine.
And we are violently refusing to look out the windshield.
And we are experiencing our own modern simplification. We suffer from a profound cultural amnesia. We have a digital tendency to ignore the past, to discard tradition as backwards, and to view historical philosophical knowledge as irrelevant to our modern, highly optimized lives.
We think we're smarter than the past.
We are echoing the simpletons. We believe that we can sever ourselves from the deep philosophical roots of our civilization, rely entirely on the digital tools we've built, and still somehow thrive.
How would you frame the ultimate relevance of this broadcast for someone listening today walking around with a supercomputer in their pocket?
I frame this entire radio drama as a warning written in ashes and whispered through centuries. It tells us, with terrifying clarity, that our technological brilliance will not save us if it vastly outpaces our moral and spiritual maturity.
You cannot survive a godlike technology with a primitive morality.
You really can't.
Sitting here in this studio by the river, looking out at the quiet world, it makes you want to step back and view this entire epic through a lens of timeless paradox. It brings to mind a thought very much in the style of G.K. Chesterton.
Let's hear the paradox.
The modern world fears the past, yet it cannot survive without it.
That's very Chesterton.
We look at tradition, at the slow, deliberate, agonizing preservation of old ideas, the way the monks preserve the books, and we often view it as a heavy iron chain holding us back from progress.
We just want to move forward.
We think exactly like the secular scientists in the story, viewing the monks as backward relics of a dark age. We want to cut the chain so we can sprint faster into the future. Yet, as this beautiful broadcast shows us with such devastating clarity, when the chain of memory is broken, progress doesn't lead to utopia.
No, it leads right back to the cave.
It leads directly to the flame deluge. The ultimate synthesis this drama demands is a paradox. Reason is what builds the engine of civilization, yes, but faith, humility, and the memory of our profound limitations must hold the steering wheel.
Because if we worship the engine and ignore the wheel,
we crash. Every single time.
That is the tragedy and the profound beauty of the Albertian order of Leibowitz. They are the keepers of the wheel in a world that has gone mad, obsessing over the engine.
Let's bring the tone down for a moment and just reflect on the silence at the end of the broadcast. As the final episode concludes, the audio landscape strips away the noise of the 38th century.
The jets fade out.
The jets are gone. The teletypes are silent. We are left with a striking, unforgettable visual and auditory image. The desert monastery, which stood for 1,200 years as a stubborn beacon of human memory, has been reduced to radioactive rubble once again.
The cycle is complete.
The Quo Peridator starship is gone, carrying a handful of monks, children, and the ancient books out into the silent, cold dark of space.
And back on Earth, the cycle has finished. The buzzards take flight over a sea that has been poisoned by radioactive fallout. The ecosystem is dying.
It's totally barren.
The narrator notes that deep beneath the waves, a shark evades the poison by swimming into the deepest, coldest water, where it is very hungry that season.
It is a bleak, chilling ending. But within that bleakness, it highlights the indomitable endurance of objective truth, the terrifying fragility of human memory, and the enduring nature of the soul.
Earth may have destroyed itself, but the monks did their job.
They saved the memory of humanity.
They kept the light burning in the dark long enough to pass the torch.
We leave you with this lingering question to explore on your own. When you look at the trajectory of our world today, our engines, our algorithms, our politics, will our current civilization be the one that finally figures out how to break the cycle of rise and destroy? Or are we right now simply laying down the next layer of radioactive ashes for future monks to excavate?
It's the only question that really matters.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into a true masterpiece of speculative theology and radio storytelling. From the studio by the river, we bid you a warm and thoughtful farewell. Keep listening, keep questioning, and never forget to look back at the ashes.